The cafeteria of Galactic Preparatory Academy buzzed with the usual chaos of 200 students from 47 different species eating, arguing, and occasionally trying to consume each other's appendages by accident. Iris Chin sat alone at table 17, the one closest to the waste disposal units, where the smell was worst and the lighting flickered every 40 seconds like a dying star. She had learned, in her 3 months at the academy, that humans were assigned the worst seats not by official policy, but by the unspoken cruelty of social hierarchy. She didn't mind the smell. She'd grown up in a recycling colony on Titan. Nothing smelled worse than processed methane at breakfast. What she did mind was the lunch. She had spent 40 minutes that morning preparing it. Real Earth food, synthesized from the Academy's limited human-compatible stores. Rice, black beans seasoned with cumin and garlic powder she'd traded 3 weeks of dessert credits to acquire. A small square of dark chocolate she'd been saving since her birthday. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it was home, and when she closed her eyes and ate it, she could almost hear her mother's voice telling her to slow down. That food wasn't going anywhere. The Vrethkai twins arrived like bad weather, sudden and smelling of ozone. GRYX and Torvin were third-year students, physically imposing by any standard in the known galaxy. 7 feet of grayscaled muscle, with 4 arms each and bioluminescent ridges that flashed dominant signals in threatening amber. They had been held back twice. Everyone assumed this was due to academic failure. The truth, that they had been held back for repeated behavioral violations, was something the Academy quietly buried to avoid a diplomatic incident with the Vrethkai Dominion. GRYX reached down with one massive hand and simply picked up Iris's tray. Human nutrition requirements are inefficient, Torvin announced loudly, performing for the nearby tables. Several Kelthian students laughed, a sound like glass breaking. Your species wastes caloric resources on flavor compounds that serve no survival function. That's my lunch, Iris said. Her voice was flat. Controlled. GRYX corrected, and dropped the entire tray into the waste disposal unit behind her. The chocolate landed last. She heard it hit. Iris looked at the disposal unit for a long moment. Then she looked at her hands, folded neatly on the table. Then she picked up her datapad, noted the time, 11:42 Academy Standard, and walked out of the cafeteria without a word. Several students watched her go. Most went back to eating. At table 4, a young man with close-cropped dark hair and the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable set down his fork. Zane Okafor was a second-year student, human, on an academic scholarship from the Outer Colonies Foundation. He had a 4.0 in advanced xenobiology and a disciplinary record that read, at first glance, as completely clean. At second glance, if you knew what to look for, you'd notice that 3 separate complaints against him had been filed and subsequently withdrawn. That 2 Thrinian upperclassmen who had hazed him during his first week had quietly transferred to different institutions. That the dining hall seating algorithm had been mysteriously reprogrammed to seat humans at better tables for exactly 1 week before being corrected, and that the reprogramming had occurred from a terminal Zane had been near. He had never been caught doing anything directly. He picked up his datapad and sent one message to Iris. You okay? Her response came back in 40 seconds. Fine. Handled. He stared at those 2 words for a moment. Then he smiled, a small, private thing, and went back to eating his lunch. At 14:30, Academy Administrator Voskellen received the first complaint. It came from the athletic department. Specifically, from Coach Drex, who was reporting that the Vrethkai twins had failed to appear for mandatory combat fitness training. This was unusual. GRYX and Torvin lived for combat fitness. It was the only class either of them had ever received full marks in. At 14:47, a second complaint arrived. The twins' dormitory suite had apparently locked itself from the inside and was not responding to standard override commands. Maintenance was called. At 15:10, maintenance reported back. The door had been welded shut from the inside using a technique that maintenance supervisor Clork, a 40-year veteran of Academy infrastructure, described as elegant, actually. Whoever did this understood the thermal tolerance of the locking mechanism perfectly. This wasn't vandalism. This was engineering. At 15:15, the administrator received a third message. This one was from the Vrethkai twins themselves, transmitted from inside the locked room via emergency communicator. They wanted to make a formal apology to a human student named Iris Chun. Voskellen stared at the message for a long time. In his 22 years administering the academy, he had never once received an unsolicited apology from a Vrethkai student. The species did not, as a cultural matter, recognize the concept of apology. It was considered a form of weakness so profound that the Vrethkai language didn't have a direct word for it. They used a borrowed term from a conquered language that roughly translated to the sound made by something breaking. He called the twins on the emergency channel. "We wish to formally apologize," GRYX said. His bioluminescent ridges, visible on the security feed, were flickering a color Voskellen had never seen a Vrethkai display: pale lavender. Fear-adjacent. "We took someone's food, and we should not have done that. We are also," Torvin added, very quietly, "willing to pay for replacement nutrition and any associated emotional damages as defined under Article 7 of the Academy's Interspecies Conduct Code, which we have been reading for the past 2 hours." Voskellen looked at his security officer. His security officer looked back at him. "Can you open the door?" Voskellen asked maintenance. "We can," Clork said, with the tone of someone who found the puzzle more interesting than the solution. "But I'd like to study this welding pattern for another hour first, if you don't mind." Iris was in the library when Zane found her, 3 hours after the cafeteria incident. She was doing homework, or pretending to. "They apologized," Zane said, sitting across from her. "I heard." She didn't look up from her datapad. Maintenance found 17 separate modifications to their room's environmental systems. Whoever did it apparently adjusted the atmospheric composition to produce mild but persistent discomfort. Nothing harmful, nothing that would flag medical sensors, just enough to make them feel the way you probably felt this morning. Iris turned a page. They also found that someone had accessed the Academy's public records archive and pulled every documented incident involving the twins going back 3 years, compiled it into a formal report, sent it anonymously to the Academy's Board of Trustees, the Galactic Preparatory Accreditation Committee, and, this one's interesting, the Vrethkai Dominion's own Internal Honor Commission. Iris said nothing. "The Vrethkai Honor Code," Zane continued pleasantly, "apparently has very strict rules about students who bring dishonor to their institutions while studying abroad. The twins got a message from their own government this afternoon. The lavender color on their bioluminescent ridges? That's not fear. That's shame. Vrethkai apparently experience shame as a physical sensation. Their ridges literally change color." I looked it up. Iris finally looked up. Her expression was perfectly neutral. "That's very interesting, Zane. Whoever did all of this," he said, "knew exactly which systems to access, which cultural pressure points to push, and how to do it all without a single traceable action. That's a very specific skill set. It's an academy full of people from 47 species," Iris said. "Lots of people have specific skill sets." Zane leaned back in his chair and smiled, the same small, private smile from the cafeteria. "You grew up on a recycling colony," he said. "Environmental systems, atmospheric controls, pressure valves. Lots of people grew up in technical environments. Your mother is a xenocultural diplomat, which would explain a thorough understanding of Vrethkai honor codes. That's public information. And your father," Zane said, "is the lead archivist for the Outer Colonies Records Bureau." Iris closed her datapad. "I just wanted my lunch back," she said. "I know." Zane stood up, collecting his things. "For what it's worth, the chocolate was the part that got me. The chocolate. That they threw away something that small and that specific." He shook his head. "Some things aren't about dominance hierarchies. Some things are just mean." Iris looked out the library window at the Academy's central plaza, where news of the twins' unprecedented apology was already spreading through the student body with the velocity that only truly shocking information achieves. "My mom always said," Iris said quietly, "that the most effective response to a bully isn't louder than theirs. It's smarter. Your mom sounds like a wise woman. She also said," Iris added, picking her datapad back up, "that you should always leave your opponent a way to save face. Otherwise, they have nothing to lose and become dangerous." Zane paused at the end of the aisle. "Is that why you let them apologize instead of escalating further?" Iris smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile in 3 months at the Academy. "That," she said, "and because I need them to think I'm done." Zane walked out of the library into the afternoon light and made a mental note, for his own sake, to never, under any circumstances, take Iris Chin's lunch. Across the academy, table 17 sat empty. No one had been assigned to it since that morning. The assignment algorithm, as of 1600 hours standard, had quietly rerouted all human students to tables near the windows. No one could explain how it had happened. No one looked too hard.